I believe it is recording. Yes. Here we are. This is the Zoom session on protecting your logbook, and it's going to be fun. So here we go. Everybody get a chance to get back to what they want to do. You could each unmute yourselves if you want to talk. Everybody's speechless.
Well, I'm Ray Fay, and I'm just really happy to be here tonight. Whoever picked out this talk tonight is a good one, along with most of them, but should be very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. All of these are available as recordings. We record every Zoom session and then make it available so you can go look at it at leisure. Anybody else want to jump in and say hello?
I'll say hello. I'm Dale Fisher, flying a 63 Comanche out of LaPorte, Indiana. Papa, Papa, Oscar, and good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I'll introduce myself if everybody didn't catch it earlier. I'm Dwight Coombe, Ellenville, New York, 9235 Papa. I've had since 92. And how is this one going? Don't we have a one person or couple people in particular we're going to talk about the logbooks?
Yes, one person in particular is going to talk, and when we get to that point, I'll ask you all. I'll again mute everybody and ask you to go to speaker view so you can see that person up close and personal. Hey, Dwight, how's that flying for Wings and Wheels? Still on?
Wings and Wheels for Warriors is still aiming to be on June 20th, and unless the local authorities try to stop it for because of this pandemic stuff, but so far we're still trying to make sure it happens. We're geared to have it happen. So it probably won't be as big as other years, but anybody can come have fun. It'll be good.
I understand that.
Everything goes to the disabled. Everything goes to disabled American veterans. Any money we raise, every dollar.
What's the airport identifier?
November '89.
It's on the schedule for the fly-ins, and it's the first actual fly-in that we have this year that is scheduled to do it. It also, that your neck of the woods right now is in phase 1 of the recovery, right?
Yeah, we're looking at this as an outdoor activity because of the spread of the 40 plus acres we have in that field and the way we have things set up. So we're confident it's going to work out pretty well.
I guess I'll introduce myself. My name's Chris McGough. I fly a 64 250 out of Fullerton, California. I've had it about 18 years, and I listened to some of the other recordings and came across this on Facebook and thought I'd join in tonight. The recordings were very useful. I haven't listened to all of them yet, but most of them, it's nice to hear a bunch of people talk about Comanche. Seems like I'm always talking to myself about it.
You have to go to a fly-in, then you feel a lot of Comanches.
Oh, I do. Every year I go to Oshkosh, but that's not an option this year.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Well, find some people in your neck of the woods and make your own Comanche fly-in.
Yeah, we're doing that. We're going to do Father's Day here in Columbia, California. I think I'm going to try to get a group.
That's one of the things that Bill Cunniff is going to be talking about in a few minutes is our Comanche GAP program, Get Acquainted program. And the whole idea is to get local neighborhood groups of Comanche pilots together.
Yeah, I need a few people in Southern California that know and like to fly formation. So I've got a few people that I fly pretty regularly with here. So we're looking to get a few more.
Are you working with a Bonanza group?
No, well, yeah, I work with the Bonanza group and the Moonies. I actually do if you've ever watched the mass fly-in and Moonies, you'll see one Comanche with them, and it's me.
Well, with the Mooney, you almost blend in. The only difference is the tail.
The tail is a little different. Yeah, they say mine is backwards. So
We've got about 5 or 6 Comanche drivers at Gillespie Field, KSEE in El Cajon by San Diego. And we all just run around and not real well organized.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll have to get together. Yeah, I've been through the whole Mooney training program and the Bonanza one for formation, and it's a good way to do it safely. If anybody's interested, I know people talked about it, but we've never. It's quite a commitment to go through it, but it's worth it if you enjoy that kind of flying.
When we did,
How do you get a Comanche to go slow enough to keep in formation with a Mooney?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's fun because even the Bravos, we can catch them real quick. So pursuit rejoins are real easy for the Comanche. It's never a problem. But yeah, sometimes we have to tell them to pick it up a notch, especially some of the older models.
Hey,
But
Chris,
they actually complement each other pretty well.
Sorry, I missed where you're based out of.
Fullerton.
Oh, nice. I'm over at Hawthorne. There's a few of us over there as well.
Oh, okay, great.
Interested in perhaps some formation flying one of these days. We're well, myself, I don't know how many other Comanches, but I'll be camping up at Kern the weekend of the 5th and 6th. If
okay.
At Kern to go out camping. Yep.
Okay, that's good. You should. I think Father's Day weekend I'm gonna put it on Facebook to try to get a group of people. I know there's a couple Comanches at Fullerton that are interested in going. So I'll if you're on the Facebook group, I'll throw that up there and see if we can get a few more to go to Columbia for Father's Day weekend.
Sounds good.
Yeah, hi, my name's Chris Alger. I'm calling from Canada. Flying a 180 Charlie Foxtrot Yankee Hotel uniform. That's the plane that we flew around the world in 2014. And my question is, that flying that we were talking about earlier, where is that again? You gave me the name of the airport.
Ellenville, the one at Ellenville.
Yeah, what state's that in?
That's in Ellenville, New York. It's near
it's in
West
New York.
Point.
Okay. And what's the date of that?
June 20th.
June 20th. Okay, well, I guess I can't go because the border's closed till the 21st.
Aha. I'm going to share this one again. This is the I hope I can get it. Here we go. Nope, wrong one. I'm sorry. Forget it. I'll get to it later. I'm going to talk about it later anyhow. But the
Okay.
the schedule we have for fly-ins has that on it.
Okay.
And Krista, did you register for this one? Do I have your email?
Yeah, you should have.
Okay, I will make sure I send you a link to our website so you can see that.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So this is Murray from the other coast from Chris in California. I'm in New Hampshire, but I have seen Chris land with the mass arrivals of Moonies at Oshkosh while volunteering out there. So it's great to connect with you and everybody else here on the call.
Yeah, good to talk. Good to connect with you too.
Yeah, last year we actually had 2 Comanches in the caravan. Another gentleman from French, or not French Valley, from Fullerton also went. So, but he's out of it now. He stepped up to a Cirrus. So poor him. It's got a beautiful Comanche for sale. If anybody's interested.
Tell him to hold on to it until he realizes it is a mistake.
That's what I've been telling him.
Give me some more details about that Comanche for sale. I just talked to a pilot today that may be looking. What's the tail number?
It's a 260B. It's probably one of the best there is as far as it has everything. It's a low time engine, has the composite prop. modern avionics. I mean, electronic ignition, all the good stuff. Let me find the tail number here. Hold on. It's listed on Barnstormers and ASO and all that, but I'll find it for you and put it in the chat. How about that?
Good idea.
If I don't find it in time here.
That's fine.
I think at this point, we're going to give Bill Cunniff a chance for a 10-minute talk about the new Comanche GAP program. So I'm going to, again, mute everybody. You do have the option if you need to unmute and get yourself back in. I would suggest that everybody goes to the speaker view so you can see Bill up close and personal. Here we go. Bill, you're on.
Tribe members to share experiences, knowledge, and to help one another in ways that encourage fellowship and mutual interest. And this.
Sorry, hang on, Bill. I ended up cutting off the beginning of it. You want to start again? We'll get it covered.
Oh, okay.
Thank
1,
you.
2, 3.
Go for it.
Okay, Pete. The officers of the Northeast Comanche Tribe requested that a way be created to get members to become acquainted with local tribe members, to share experiences and knowledge, and to help one another in ways that encourage fellowship and mutual interest. And of course, if you listen to the conversation tonight, that's obvious. I've been around the Comanche world for some time and have experienced such a culture. I suggested that developing a Get Acquainted program could work for this purpose. And we'll go into that. The model I used was the way that this developed on Long Island in the 80s. There are probably some current members who participated, and I can think of 1 or 2, or became aware of this group. It started off with 3 members based at Amityville. That was an old very, very short strip there. And developed into a group that varied from 10 to 30 Comanches from as far away as New Jersey and Connecticut. Now, we say far away because most of those cases, they really had to go through the New York control zone. There was also at least a monthly get-together where all of the facets of the Comanche world were discussed. They were always competent Comanche knowledgeable technical people, more than willing to help if needed. These gatherings evolved into a barbecue culture, and most enjoyable, where all Comanche matters were discussed. Many longtime friendships were developed, as well as a group flight plan to places of interest, typically the islands off the coast of Massachusetts. While it was an informal arrangement, it was a very important one, and the members really wanted to be included in every one of them. Now just think about this. You might ask yourself, how many local Comanche members do I know well enough to call for help? Or how many members know me well enough to ask for my support? Interesting thought. We believe that implementing the Comanche GAP would very much serve the Northeast Comanche tribe members and maybe would develop into Comanche neighborhoods. If you look at what Pete just put up, you can see how the membership it has clustered and where it is along the way. And just think of it, if you're going to fly from, shall we say, Maryland up to Vermont, it would be nice to be able to speak to somebody up there before you go to find out what it's like. Will greatly facilitate the development of the Comanche neighborhood and good neighbors. That's really what it's all about, good neighbors. To give you some idea of the location, the map Pete put up will give you some idea of the location and concentration of members. We have mapped out the location of members in the Northeast Tribe. Okay. As you can see, and where they're concentrated around major urban areas. You are never far from one another. While this is a very brief presentation, its purpose is to get feedback as to your interest and participation. We already have one site that has expressed interest and has already started to use the information that we can give them to make the contacts. At the next session, we will discuss how the Get Acquainted program will be implemented. Please contact me about participation. If anybody has any question or can add to this, please do so now.
Okay, if you have questions for Bill, give him unmute yourself and ask.
Oh, I might add, this is not going to be limited just to the Northeast area because of its very nature, it's going to spread all over the place. Now, just to give you a heads up, we have the capability now to pick an airport and to find out how many members are within a 50-mile radius of that airport. And I'm willing to bet that somebody who is based like in, since I'm not in the Northeast anymore, how about Danielson, Connecticut, that there are a lot of people there that you really don't know and they don't know. And what we're trying to do is break that wall down to get everybody to know one another so that we can share and enjoy. Any thoughts?
There's a chance to unmute and chime in.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead, Pete, and unmute and
Yeah, everybody can unmute themselves. You have the ability.
Chris, you on the West Coast, you seem to have some people out there. Would you easily think that there's a lot of other people around there that would be interested in getting to know one another and to share the Comanche program?
Oh, definitely. I think it's a great idea. There's been a couple times where we've just put it on Facebook that we're going to go get breakfast somewhere, and a few others show up. So, I mean, it's not hard to get that out.
If that's the case, send me a note, and we will find the people around your area that are Comanche people, and we'll pass it on to you, and then give you the idea how it's developing elsewhere. It really has to be a local thing, because the people, what goes on in Connecticut probably will not go on the same way in North Carolina where I live. I know right now that there are 17 people within 75 miles of my house, or the base, Newbern, North Carolina. I have met probably 3. I intend to meet all 17. And all we have to do is once we crack the door open, 80 bars the door, and the things are going to start. But I'll be more than happy to do that. We have one fellow now that has 15 people on it. That's before we even give him the number of people that are in his area.
We did this for each of the officers, and here's the list that showed up for me. Within 35 miles of my base here at Danielson, Connecticut. These are the people that showed up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the information that you would get. Phone numbers, emails, whatever we've got.
So who do I send that request to? Is there an email address or?
Well, this is the next session is how we have found it worked in the past. Okay. In other words, somebody's got to make calls. Okay. But I will bet that as you make calls, you're going to find that some of the members there, okay, already know the people that you don't know, and they could contact them more easily. And it's just like the whole group kind of coalescing and coming together.
One of the other benefits of this, I found out, was my insurance company, it's written in the policy, if there's like a hurricane coming and I can move my airplane more than 75 nautical miles away, they will pay a couple of nights hotel and gas. So my only adjustment to that, instead of 50 miles, I would suggest 75 miles. So that if you get a hold, yeah, you can do it that way.
Good. See the kind of thing that's coming out of the conversation now? That's exactly what's going to develop when we put the members together.
Chris out in California, I just put my email on my identification, Pete at Piper32Papa@gmail. And Bill's address is also on his at billcun930@gmail.com. Either one of us, we can get to the information to you. Anybody else?
That's great.
All
Thanks.
right.
I'll make sure I ping you guys.
And Chris, your feedback is going to be critical to the further development of this, because we can say, look what they're doing. Okay. And then what we'll do is have some of the people call the people in your area, not yourself, by the way, and start this thing. It's like neighborhoods type things, and that's what we're aiming at.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
You got it. Oh, may I say one thing? If you look over my right shoulder, there's a monitor. And on that monitor, you'll see there's about 100 different Comanches in different places. One of the things I think we ought to start thinking of doing is that as we put a neighborhood together, develop that kind of a thing so that could be the wallpaper on everybody's computer. You see how that will coalesce and bring people together?
Yep.
Especially when the wife says, honey, our picture's not up there.
Yes, it's not your wife, it's your girlfriend.
I don't want to get particular now. Thank you, Pete.
You bet. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, I'll be in touch for the next session.
Thank you. Okay, let's go back to the gallery and chat.
Pete, thanks, Spellman. Would it be inappropriate for me to comment that this information used to be available in many forms from an organization of which you are no longer a member? And they published a little book. This was before computers were everywhere, including your wrist, which had every member with information as to name, what you flew, tail number, your address, phone numbers, email, and all that arranged by any way you could go into it. And this book was published every year or so to keep people up to date as to who the members were, to foster camaraderie. Then it migrated to the computer, and then suddenly it's not there anymore in any way, shape, or form. If you were still a member, you could look at your own information, but if you wanted to look at my information, you got was my name and address, or excuse me, my name, and when my membership was up. Would it be appropriate for me to comment on that?
Yeah. Yeah, the accessibility went way downhill in a very short time.
went to 0.
Yep.
I already know where I live. That is most nights.
And we got about 5 minutes left before Kristin comes online. So if you want to chat, go for it.
Hi. Yeah, I like to mention, Steve, because one of the things that I've noted, I've been around since 1975, so we've been through many iterations of what the Comanche world is about. But it looks like now that the closeness is not there. And this is what's behind my thinking. The more people we can have on the same page or in the same book, the more strength that this operation is going to have. But more important, we're going to have better pilots, because when people talk to one another, I've always had every conversation with many Comanches that I've always learned something, and from being there. In one case, it's always come up the way I start my airplane, a C model. People say, "Hey, you put the throttle back 2 inches." Well, I was taught to put it all the way open, and it works just as well. The fourth blade, it generally takes off and goes. But does that make one way better than the other? No, they both work, and it's good to know it.
A while back, we put together, just for our own convenience, a thing we call ride sharing. We have a thing now when we sign up to go to a fly-in, whether or not you have room for riders, for passengers. The whole idea was to save money, sharing the expense, and also see another fly his aircraft. You know, Bernie Stumpf and I shared rides a few times from Connecticut and Westerly, Rhode Island area down to Georgetown, for instance. And we both approach that route totally different. I love to go down the Hudson Corridor, so I'm flying low in VFR. Bernie doesn't like to go through the airspace, so he flies high and goes IFR. And it's a totally different approach. But we both ended up in Georgetown pretty well together.
Some of them get to be about 20, 25 inches big, so they can be next. Our temper bass is a white bass, right there. The top is a white bass, the middle one's a hybrid, which aquaculturalists have merged the white and striped bass to get hybrid bigger, and the hybrid striped bass, which is used for stocking and sport fishing in the state. These are very important fish in the Commonwealth for
Hi, guys. Hello.
Hello.
I don't know how to get in, I'm Pierre.
Well, you're in enough that you're speaking.
I'm in at this time, yeah? Am I?
You're in.
I'm trying to get in, but I don't know what to do exactly, I'm Pierre. I'm speaking to you from Canada. I'm located in Sherbrooke, CYSC, Sherbrooke, Canada. and I own a Comanche 260B. I just want to let you know that I'm in, and I appreciate very much to join in to follow the conversation of other Comanche owners.
What's your N number?
Charlie Golf Foxtrot Hotel India. Charlie Golf Foxtrot Hotel India. I've got a nice 260B, as I mentioned, very nicely equipped. I am IFR qualified. I also own a Navajo as well, and I like also to fly twin engines. So I have both aircrafts. I'm located mostly in Sherbrooke and in Valcourt. That's the city of Bombardier, you know, the beginning of Bombardier. Valcourt, it's TSQ3, a very tiny little airport.
Well, welcome, Pierre. We're glad to see you and hear you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Hey,
I'm
Pierre,
happy-
you're not the only Canadian. I'm Chris Algar.
Yes.
I'm from Burlington, Ontario, just outside Toronto.
Oh, yeah, very close by, you know. There is another member of our society that comes to Quebec regularly. He flies to a small airport called Saint Donat in Quebec. I can't remember his name, but he's a member of the society. You know, he has been a member of the society. I think I guess he's a president of of our tribe.
Okay.
He's from Peterborough, I guess, in Ontario, but he
Yes.
spent the summers in Quebec, you know, with his Comanche.
Good.
Okay, I'm going to have to interrupt now because it's time to get Kristin on board here to do her thing on logbooks, which has been looked forward to by a lot of people. And Kristin has a lot of background in things aircraft. So let's give her a chance. Kristin, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I guess we can manage that.
Okay, I wanted everybody to go to the speaker view and we'll go from there.
Let me see if I can get a screen share thing here to work.
I have yours ready if you want me to do it. There you go.
Yeah, there we are. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Just for, you know, some of you know a bit about me, some of you know more than you want to know about me, and some have never heard of me before. So I'll just check in here with a little bit. I have been involved in purchasing, helping people purchase, selling, etc., airplanes since about 1985, which basically means I've looked through like 1 million logbooks, it seems like. The last one earlier this morning. It's one of my aircraft logbooks are one of my pet peeves, just because of the general condition that I find them in. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and what owner responsibility is, and what should be in them and what shouldn't be in them, and then take any questions that anybody has. Start off with a couple of things here, and we'll start with kind of definitions. These are some of the FAA's favorites. Now, people are under a sort of a misconception, I think, sometimes about how airplane time is calculated. The FAA says airplane time is time in service, which is not the same as what you log as a pilot. Time in service is from liftoff to touchdown. And for some reason, the FAA has let us use tack time and Hobbs time and, you know, everything else, except what is actually accurate. If you've looked at aircraft logbooks very carefully, you'll often notice, especially the older ones, really had space and were expecting you to log each flight. And that was, you know, how the military anyway would, you know, keep track of time in service. That co-pilot would write down when it took off and when it would land again, and that was how time was calculated. Hobbs is not correct if it's hooked up to engines, because obviously the engines are running when you taxi. Hobbs is only accurate if it's on a squat switch, or it's connected to a GPS, or it's an internal GPS function that you're using. TAC time doesn't count, though the FAA doesn't seem to enforce it. It's people have been using TAC as an analog for the time in service since, you know, probably time immemorial, and the FAA has just sort of let that one go. But that is, you know, what technically time in service is. If you have the capability of running it off a squat switch or your GPS, you're actually putting more time on your airplane by using TAC, you know, or a Hobbs meter than you would be, than you actually need to be putting on. So you're in a good possibility you're doing your maintenance a little bit more often than necessary. Probably doesn't make a huge financial difference at the end of the day, but there you have it. FAA talks about the responsibilities being the owners or the operator. Well, everybody kind of knows what the owner is, but what is an operator? Generally, I think that FAA mostly considers that to be, you know, somebody who's leased an aircraft. It's kind of a gray area when you're talking about, you know, an airplane owned, you know, maybe by a relative, but you're doing the one that's flying it. And this kind of comes up when you're doing preventative maintenance, because the owner or operator is allowed to do preventative maintenance, but your friend, quote unquote friend, is not. So you probably have to have some sort of a relationship to the airplane to be doing preventative maintenance on an aircraft, that you could basically say that you have a oral lease kind of a thing, you know, because it's your father's plane or your uncle's plane or your mother's plane or whatever the deal might be. A couple other terms that come up time and time again in FAA is the distinction between a rebuilt and an overhaul. These are often used, you know, rather casually, but to the FAA, rebuilt means it's zero timed. And pretty much only the original manufacturer is ever authorized to zero time out a component. The original manufacturer can legally designate some other entity to zero time their product, but as of yet, that's not happened. You know, Lycoming and Continental don't let anybody else zero time their engines except them. An overall, by FAA definition, is a disassembly, inspection, a repair in accordance with whatever published maintenance instructions. And then, of course, there's return to service, and that's basically your maintenance entry, approving the aircraft after whatever work has been done to it. A lot of owners, I think maybe in the back of their mind, they kind of recognize that they're responsible for the aircraft maintenance records. But an awful lot of owners, in my experience anyway, don't seem to think too much about it. They've got the you know, pouch full of logbooks, and they give them to their mechanic. And sometimes they leave them there, and, you know, sometimes they just pick them back up without ever giving them a second thought. And at the end of the day, this could be a pretty substantial mistake in certain circumstances. It is the owner, the operator, that is responsible to make sure that the maintenance records are complete and that everything is there that's required. The mechanic's responsibility is to make appropriate entries for the work they do when they're returning the aircraft back to service. The maintenance records on an aircraft are much broader than just the logbooks. The FAA has a number of other requirements, and certain other ones arise by happenstance. The AD compliance sheets are part of the maintenance records. FAA requires you to keep an AD compliance sheet. Usually this is defaulted to the IA and never really given any consideration, but it is the owner-operator's responsibility. All forms 337, those are part of the aircraft maintenance records. And there can be numerous other documents that can fall into that category, sometimes depending on how the maintenance records, the maintenance entries were made. You know, if you see a maintenance entry where, you know, basically the entry says something very lame, like repaired left wing, see work order. Well, that work order just became part of the aircraft maintenance records. FAR 91-417 requires the following to be maintained by the owners. Records of maintenance, preventative maintenance, alterations, records of 100 hours, etc., etc. And we'll talk about what can end up being records of maintenance. And as I alluded to previously, depending on how the mechanics make entries, other things that you wouldn't think of as part of the maintenance record can become part of the maintenance record. Also, FAA requires records containing the following: total time in service of each airframe, engine, and propeller. Current status of life-limited parts. That doesn't affect us too much on the Comanches. ELT batteries is one that kind of comes to mind. But fortunately for Car 3 airplanes, we don't have a whole lot of life-limited parts. That got to be sort of an FAA fetish with Part 23, which Comanches have nicely avoided. Time since overhauls of items required to be overhauled at set intervals. Keep in mind that that word required. Engines aren't required to be overhauled at set intervals. Current status of required inspections. And some of these, you know, obviously can be just derived by looking at the logbook. Current status of a required inspection doesn't necessarily need to be a separate form. Just looking, you know, paging back through the airframe log, you can find out when it was last done. That counts. Current status of applicable airworthiness directives. That should be, I mean, you can argue that if you read through, you know, 3 airframe logs, you can divine the status of all the ADs, but that takes several hours. And if the FAA were ever to ask you, you know, to show something, just handing them 3 logbooks probably isn't going to make them very happy. And forms 337. Most owners are pretty good about keeping 337s, but the logbooks I was looking at today, the logbooks reference many 337s, and very few were with the records. So the FAR 91-417 also sets time limits for how long records must be maintained. Believe it or not, standard logbook entries, you can throw those away after a year. Records listed in the last slide that I just went through, the times and whatnot, must be maintained permanently and transferred with the aircraft when sold. And list of discrepancies from an annual, if an annual inspection determined the aircraft was unairworthy due to discrepancies only has to be maintained until the discrepancies are repaired. So if you want to, other than the information on the previous one, if you want to go throw out your logbooks, you are legally allowed to do so. I don't know anybody that really wants to throw away 20 to 30% of the value of their airplane, but for some reason the FAA seems to think that's okay. Maintenance records are definitely just not limited to logbook entries. As I said earlier, work orders can be part of the maintenance record when the mechanics get lazy and just reference a work order in their logbook entry. And I run across literally, every time I look at a set of logbooks for somebody, to do a pre-purchase assessment or something, there's always just literally, on average, dozens of entries where it references a work order. Well, of course, nobody probably ever told the owner that work order was now part of the maintenance record. So the owner gets the logbooks back, gets the work order, pays the invoice, puts it in their financial file somewhere, hangs onto it for the required time for the IRS, and throws it out. And they've thrown out part of their log entries. So I'm trying to figure out what was done to an airplane, and it's like, well, repairs made to the left wing, see work order. Engine overhaul, see work order. Having those such lame entries down the line affects your value, the value of your airplane. I mean, when I can't figure out what was done on an engine overhaul, that somebody did 300 hours ago, and the seller wants, obviously to get, fairly full price for that. And I've got to tell the buyer that I have no idea what was done at the end. It was signed off as overhaul, but what they replaced, I don't know. All they did is reference a work order, and nobody's got a work order anymore. Maintenance releases, all those 8130-3 and yellow tags. Those are usually part of the maintenance records because they're usually referred to, or a third party did the overhaul, like an overhaul magneto. Your mechanic installs an overhauled magneto and hands you the logbooks and a couple of yellow tags. Those yellow tags are maintenance release forms. Again, 8130-3s are now part of the record because that was part of the work that was done. And especially logbook entries that reference work orders, reference maintenance releases, etc., have now made that part of the aircraft maintenance records. Overall, I wouldn't accept that from a mechanic that I was paying money to repair. Spell it out in the logbook. I'm paying you for your time. And they've invented printers and computers recently. So, rather than laboriously writing these things out by hand, mechanics can print out a more detailed work order, a more detailed logbook entry. And that's what we should be paying for. That's what we should be getting. That's what we're paying for. The FAA is kind of specific about what needs to be in a logbook entry. Frequently, I don't see logbook entries being particularly complete. Anyway, each person who maintains, performs preventive maintenance, rebuilds, alters, etc., must provide a description of the work performed or reference to data acceptable to the administrator. So you can say, repaired, trim drum in accordance with, Piper PA-24 service manual, and you've given it an adequate description. Or you can describe what you've done. Many logbook entries are more, cryptic than that. Repaired trim system or something like that. Well, that doesn't explain what was done and is not acceptable. And you shouldn't, as an owner, accept that from a mechanic you're paying for. If you can't read the description and understand what was done, or figure out how you'd figure out what was done, don't accept it. Date of completion of the work performed, name of the person performing the work, if other than the person signing off. That's one that is often not done. And that one doesn't bug me too much unless somebody's signing it off. But technically, if there's two people doing projects in the shop on an airplane and only one of them is signing the annual off, technically they're supposed to write down who was doing the other work. So there really technically should be two logbook entries. Though, as long as they're complete, I don't think anybody cares all that much. And of course, signature, certificate number, and the kind of certificate held by the person holding the work. And this applies to owners that are doing preventative maintenance. You have to make this kind of logbook entry as well. And your signature, your pilot certificate number, and private pilot, commercial pilot, whatever. It's the same deal for mechanics and is for pilots doing preventive maintenance. Inspection logbook entries are pretty much the same except for one thing, and that's the aircraft total time in service. I would say a very large percentage, a third to a half of the annual logbook entries I see, just throw in tack time. Tack time's not total time most of the time. It isn't when the airplane's been new, but in which case it should be, delineated that is the aircraft's total time in service. Just putting in hobs or tack is not acceptable, but it's done very, very commonly. And if you're signing off, if an airworthy, if you get your annual entry back and it's your airplane's being signed off as unairworthy, then the IA has to give you a signed and dated list of discrepancies. Now, for maintaining good records, I see some really nicely organized ones, and I see ones that are, just a pile of old logbooks falling apart. It runs the gamut. But I know from working with buyers that good logbooks do help sell the plane. And they save money on maintenance, especially if you have to switch IAs for some reason. So I recommend insisting on complete logbook entries that are detailed enough that you understand what was done. Organize your records into binders, other than the logbooks themselves. Though the AdLog system is a binder-based system that has a lot of merit as well. But a section of 337s in plastic sleeves in date order is very helpful. Insist that IAs keep the AD compliance sheet current. You don't have to do a new one every year. You don't need to pay, probably the first time you do an IA with an IA, they may insist on wanting to do a full AD compliance sheet, which is fine. But make sure that it's kept up to date. It's signed when they do something. And then also keep a section in the binder for instructions for continuing airworthiness, which come with most of the STCs. I find an awful lot of those buried someplace where I don't know that an IA would easily find them. And usually they're down with the supplemental aircraft flight manual, the flight manual supplement, which is supposed to be in the aircraft and ends up in the maintenance records instead. Things you can do to protect your logbooks. Logbooks are pretty much impossible to recover. You lose them and you don't have copies, and you're just pretty much out of luck. Yeah, you can get the airplane airworthy again, but you just threw a large value of your airplane out the window. I highly recommend photographing them, and I've done that. You know, photograph them and you know, save them on a SD card or a flash drive or something, and put it in a safe place and update it, you know, once every year or so, so that you can, you know, if something does happen to the aircraft logbooks, that you can, you know, recover them completely. Because the best you can do on recovery, I mean, if you've lost the logbooks and now you've got this plane, well, the airplane, of course, is no longer airworthy because you can't show that it's airworthy. And now you have to go about trying to prove the status of any life-limited parts and AD compliance. Again, the Comanche, the life-limited parts, not that big a deal. You're going to end up buying probably a new ELT battery, but you're going to end up having an annual inspection done unless your last IA has still got a record of what was done and what the time in service and everything was at the time. AD compliance can be pretty expensive, is because you may, you know, if you can't prove when the landing gear 1,000 hour has been done, you're going to end up doing it. Whether it needs it or not, you're going to end up doing it. Prop AD needs to be done, you're going to end up doing it if you can't prove it. It takes anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes, you know, to sit down with a camera, pull out your first, you know, original logbook, take a picture of the face, the cover of it, so you know where it starts, open it up, take a picture of both pages open, and just keep turning the page and clicking the camera. And like I say, you're done in about an hour, and you've it's the best possible insurance, you know, for lost or damaged logbooks. You know, and you never know. You could have them in your car could be stolen. It could be a fire. You know, there's lots of ways to lose logbooks that you don't think about most of the time. So I really highly recommend, you know, making copies. Scanning takes too long. Modern cameras work much better. And you can do it so much faster, and you just have to, all you got to do is just save the images, unless you really want to fool around and put them all in PDF files. You know, you aren't ever going to need this if you don't ever lose your paper logs, but it definitely saves you in the case of lost logbooks. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, what a logbook entry ought to look like. We've got the good, the bad, and the ugly here. And here is an example of a pretty complete logbook entry for an annual inspection. The key things that ought to be in it, of course, the total time of the aircraft and the engine are in it, which is excellent. Also describes what the scope of the inspection is. Just saying it's an annual inspection isn't, you know, technically complete. I use basically the same language that he does. Is I don't inspect it in accordance with the Piper service manual, because they've got things in there that I consider overboard and are not legally required, but I'm not going to say in the logbook, you know, that I inspected the airplane in accordance with the Piper checklist. I'm going to say I did it in accordance with 43 Appendix D, and I used the service manual, or I used the Piper checklist, you know, for reference, for additional reference. And then he goes through and he lists, you know, the different ADs that he complied with and when they're next due. This is helpful. It can be kept in the AD compliance sheet, if the compliance sheet is you know, kept up to date and it's of the type that you can make multiple entries into. You know, that's another way to do it. But that's a good entry, and that's what you ought to expect for your hard-earned money. Here's one where we got an annual inspection and I got a date. No total time, not even tack time here. Love that. And this isn't even some of the worst. I mean, I've seen, you know, entries complied with, you know, AD 77-13-21, and that's all they say. That's the landing gear. Well, was it the bungees? Was it the full inspection? Was it just the inspection of the bungees? There's 3 different possibilities if you just say you complied with AD 77-13-21 on the landing gear. You know, inspected and repaired as required. Well, what? Did you replace any parts? You know, again, probably in that case, there was probably some parts listed on a work order someplace, but of course the work order disappeared a long time ago. If you want somebody, if you're selling your airplane at some point and you want somebody to have confidence that the last time the 1,000 hour in the landing gear was done, you know, make them list the parts that they put in. You know, then you kind of know what the scope of it was. I mean, I see a lot of, you know, I've looked at airplanes that have had the 1,000 hour done 3 times, and according to the logbooks, no parts were ever replaced. I mean, God must have blessed that plane and somehow managed to make it so that friction did not apply to the landing gear of that airplane. This is the entire annual inspection in this airplane. We don't know what the total time was because all we have is a tack. No idea what was done, what was looked at. Hard for me to believe that you can do a whole annual inspection and not have to fix anything. And this one is one of my favorites. This was a sticker in a logbook. The owner was selling the airplane, and he was selling it based on this engine having been overhauled, except the engine on the airplane was of a different serial number. And it went through 16 annuals with the IA just assuming that the serial number was a typo. Now the problem I had with that is they also had some yellow tags with the engine, and the logbook entry, as you can see here, said that the crankshaft was standard, except the yellow tags provided said it was the crank was undersized. The logbook entry here says they put new cylinders on it, and half the cylinders had cracked after 1,000 hours, which is pretty unusual for new cylinders. So I couldn't tell the buyer that I had any confidence that the IA that overhauled this engine at that point was about 17 years ago, hadn't actually just put the wrong sticker in the logbook. And then I really couldn't tell him anything about the condition of his engine. The deal fell apart on that. But it was, you know, it was amazing to me that 17 IAs would just assume that the serial number was a typo. So anyway, that's the story of logbooks and what the FAA requires for logbooks. And I'm happy to take any questions or listen to comments or go have dinner or whatever.
Hey, Kristin.
Yep.
If I get an 8130 that references a specific work order, but the work order is not provided with the 8130, do I have to go get that work order?
It's part of it. It's part of your records, so I would insist on it, especially since you're paying for it.
Good to know. Thank you.
So it's okay to have work orders right in logbooks then, correct?
Yeah, I mean, well, or put them in a plastic sleeve in a binder and make a note as to what they belong to.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I pretty much do not favor the concept of mechanics making logbook entries that refer to work orders.
I agree.
I'd have more sympathy if they hadn't invented printers and computers. Writing out a 4-page log entry could certainly be a little bit tedious. But that being said, these days shops that use more sophisticated software, their software will crank out a logbook entry based on what was on the work order. Shops that don't use that sophisticated, I would, personally, I would insist that they, that they write it out.
I might be a little ahead of the game than my luck here, but back in about 2005 or so, after I had the Comanche for about 3 years, I started photographing the logs and putting them into a PowerPoint that I could then reference at my desk when I wanted to. So if the IA called up and had a question, I could look right on and say what it was. I also, every annual, made a practice of photographing any work that was done. And if I could, I re-photographed before it was done and after it was finished. So I just had a photographic record of what we did that year.
I think that's great.
Also, having pictures of your panel and any equipment installed, accessories under the cow is super useful when you're at home and you need to order some parts or you need to send it to a vendor when someone's wondering like what type of attitude indicator you have in the plane when you need an overhaul. I found those photographs to be immensely useful as well.
And the other thing I just posted on the chat is that if you want to keep track of all of your logbook pages, there's an app called TurboScan, and you just keep clicking each page, and then it'll save it to a one PDF file if you prefer that.
Kristin, this is Bill Cunniff. I have a question. Is there a way that you might prepare a minimal outline of what the operator or the pilot should expect? Because I'm very impressed with your presentation here. I've had my airplane for an awfully long time, and I didn't know some of the minimum things that I should have insisted on. It would be appreciated, I know I would appreciate it, if I could get a basic thing that any entry requires this, or however you might think would be useful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I will convert it to a PDF and send it to Pete, and maybe Pete can put it up on the website.
I would be very happy to do that.
Awesome, thanks.
Hank Spellman. When I had my engine overhauled last time, which was quite a few years ago now, I asked the mechanic that was doing it, and whom I had complete confidence, to save the tag off any box that had any kind of engine part at all. Whatever it said, I didn't care. It was on the outside of the box. Just cut it out and throw it in another box, and I'd take the box home. So I had everything that was written on every part that went in it. And then within 5 years, that saved me from having to open the engine up twice to prove that some part was a particular part was not in it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and it's why you need to have those maintenance releases, and especially if you're not having a shop overhaul your engine, is to make sure that they go through the effort of providing you a list of all the parts that they put into the engine, so that if an AD comes out on some internal engine part, you're prepared to go figure out whether that AD is applicable to your airplane without taking it apart. I mean, I have taken accessory case, I've done as little as having been able to find out by taking a magneto off and looking at it. I've also had to take the entire accessory case off to look at something. And I've even had to pull a cylinder to find out whether certain connecting rod bolts were installed. Again, because there weren't any decent records. And if you have a shop overhaul your engine, I would ask for their complete file on it, because they'll have internal sheets, that will show the measurements of the cranks, et cetera, and the parts that were put in and whatnot. And, oftentimes all your mechanic gets back is they gets the engine and gets the release and a logbook entry for the overhaul, but not what the actual measurements are, or even always a detailed list of the parts. In the airplane logbooks I was looking at this morning, the engine was pretty high time, but had been overhauled a few years ago. And so the question that we needed to have answered before we could make a decision on the value of the plane was how much wear was on the crankshaft. This was an 8,000 hour crankshaft. And so it could be almost anything, wear-wise. Fortunately, the engine shop still had the records, and we were able to go get their teardown form, where they had, showed their handwritten measurements of what all the journals were on the crankshaft, and we're able to determine that there was a lot of life left in the crank. With somebody buying an airplane that they expect to have to overhaul the engine in a few years, you really want to know whether you're going to be faced with buying a crank or not. And so that's where these kind of records can really help out. The owner did not have the records and had no idea what was inside that engine, and we were just lucky enough that the engine shop still had the records. But their repair stations only required to keep their records for 2 years. I think savvier ones, keep them for 3 to 4 years, because that's kind of the statute of limitations for most of the lawsuits. So that really is probably what should drive their decisions, and not the FAA's 2 years. But beyond 4 or 5 years, you really can't necessarily expect that you're going to be able to get any records out of the repair station, because they've gotten rid of them.
Kent, did you have a question?
Yes, Kristin, this is Kent Berwick in New Mexico. Got a Twin Comanche. 2 quick questions. One is signing off an annual on a propeller or an engine. I've heard 2 stories. It can be signed off as a 100-hour, or it can be signed off as an annual. The other question is, what's the need for a current equipment list?
The FAA doesn't require a current equipment list. You know, it's usually come with the airplane with part of the weight and balance originally. So there's not a requirement. I think it's a good idea. Using the original one that came with my airplane, I made a new one. Needless to say, there were an awful lot of things that had been replaced over the years. So, you know, it made sense to update that. So I did, but it's not a requirement. As for the, when you sign off the airframe logbook, it says that you have inspected this aircraft for an annual inspection and found it to be airworthy. That covers, you know, the engine and the engine and the propeller as well. So they don't require a separate entry with the magic words, I have inspected this engine in accordance with an annual inspection and find it to be in airworthy condition. Most mechanics do, but it's not a technically you've covered it with the logbook entry. If that was your question, you were breaking up just a little bit. So
With the airframe logbook entry.
yes, the airframe logbook entry can cover the whole thing. Again, I would want my mechanic to sign them all off, just, you know, separately, you know, in case for some reason, you know, you swap engine out or something, or you know, propeller, so that you have a, you know, a separate record, so that, you know, those logbooks aren't chained together, since they are parts that, you know, may be bolted to an airplane, but they are not necessarily going to be stuck there for the rest of their life.
Well, I've seen them signed off as a 100-hour inspection rather than an annual. But you're telling me it's covered for the annual, so we're good. Thank you very much, Kristin.
It is covered. I'd ask them to do it as you know, for an annual. You're paying them, so. But you know, it is legal. So you're not, you know, you won't be hearing from the FAA over it.
Any more questions for Kristin?
Yeah, Marty, this is Marty Hanch. Hi, Kristin. Thanks for doing this. It's really very informative. Question about return to service. I've heard from different A&Ps, IAs, that a private pilot owner of the aircraft cannot do a return to service. So, see, I need to replace my landing light, and I take off the wingtip and I take off the plexiglass cover. Now my aircraft is not airworthy. If I change out the light bulb, put the plexiglass back on, the wingtip back on, have I done maintenance that I'm not allowed to do? Can I sign it back as an airworthy aircraft?
Yep.
Return to service?
Yep.
Okay.
As long as it fits under preventative maintenance, and the FAA has interpreted, the FAA legal department has actually issued a very interesting ruling, which I wrote about a while back for the Piper Flyer magazine. They've notwithstanding the fact that Part 43, Appendix A, says that these lists of preventative maintenance is all you can do. The FAA's legal department said, nah, that's not correct. And they said, look at part 1 definition of preventative maintenance. You know, it's what you can do with, you know, without complex operations and there's nothing complex about taking off a plastic or fiberglass wingtip, sliding a piece of plastic out of the way, changing a light bulb, which is specifically blessed, and then reassembling it. And so, I mean, you are in effect returning the airplane to service. I would say that even you know, if, you know, an airplane went through an annual inspection and was written up as being unairworthy because a nav light was burned out, that clearly changing a nav light is preventative maintenance. The owner could change the nav light and then return the airplane to service as being now airworthy.
Okay, thank you, Kristin.
Kristin, on the same subject, what if you had to replace a landing light bulb and you had tip tanks? Could you remove it, put it back on?
That gets a little bit more in the gray area.
Yeah, because you got fuel lines and electrical lines and
Yeah, his question is, you know, what meaneth complex operation? There's no hard and fast interpretation to that.
Is it up to the capability of the owner?
No, because I mean, there are owners that don't have A&Ps that could take an engine apart and overhaul it and put it back together.
Sure.
But trust me, the FAA would not consider that preventive maintenance.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I'm quite certain that they would consider that to be a complex operation. But I don't think removing a fiberglass non-structural wingtip would be considered.
I agree. I agree.
But fuel tanks, you know, you're deep in the gray area on that one.
Yeah, beyond gray. Okay, thank you.
You know, because there are structural screws, you know, holding that on.
Correct.
And I think when you start to get into something that is clearly structural, you're probably further in the gray area than you ought to be.
Sure.
It's trending towards midnight, not quite. We're beyond twilight here.
You could do it if your ANPIA signed off, though, couldn't you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You can do anything.
Sure.
In the supervision of an ANP who also, you know, would be qualified to do it.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask about something similar to that. What about like changing the bungee cords? Is that something the owner operator could do, or again need to be under supervision?
No, that could be done. It's changing landing gear bungees is specifically listed as preventative maintenance. Now, when that was written, they were thinking about bungees on a Piper Cub and not on a Comanche, but they don't make the distinction. I mean, it's written, and there's really nothing that complex about changing out those bungees. So, you know, I think you're on fairly safe ground on that one.
Yeah, the only threat there is breaking your arm.
Well,
Hey, Kristin, this is Lonnie. I have a friend that swapped out his landing lights with LED bulbs and just made a logbook entry himself. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't.
They were not pre-made.
You know, the FAA has not put out, you know, a boatload of guidance as to what is a major and a minor alteration. And there's just a vast amount of gray area there. And sometimes to avoid the gray area, vendors create STCs, you know, for what is a minor alteration. To me, putting in an LED light would be a minor alteration, just a logbook entry. That's how I would handle this in IA, but.
And that's something an owner can do?
I don't see why not. Changing light bulbs is part of the preventative maintenance. And,
okay.
You know, it doesn't change the electrical system at all because it draws less. I mean, if the system had been designed originally, you know, and spec'd out for LED lights and you were going to put HID boom beams in it or something, then I think you're into the major, you know, because now what you're doing has a potential to need to change wiring, need to change circuit breakers, need to do an analysis of, you know, whether the total draw on the system would exceed 80% of the capacity of the alternator. But going the other way, I don't see a problem with that. Again, it's a little bit gray area, but you know, I think it's early twilight in terms of gray.
All right, thank you.
But I guarantee you, you know, if you asked 5 IAs, you'd probably get 6 different opinions.
Exactly. I've already gotten many different opinions on that. Because the specifically in the type certificate, it lists what do they call those 4130 bulbs. It doesn't list anything else, so it has to be that, some people say.
Well, the thing about that is the you know, what they came with originally was the 4509s, and you know, that's generally correct, except you know, when you're changing something that's spelled out in the aircraft specifications, you know, so it's a defensible position to say that, but also the FAA says that, you know, for vintage aircraft, which is, this is one, if you read Advisory Circular 23-27, it, you know, blesses a lot of parts substitution for vintage airplanes. And so that sort of, you know, runs the other, you know, that kind of supports doing it.
Has anyone heard of the FSDO getting upset with someone for putting in LED lights in a plane that's not authorized for? I asked a guy from the aircraft inspection here in LA, just, you know, totally off the record, a friend of a friend, and he just laughed. He said, "I don't care."
Yeah, the reality is that the FAA is not going to bother with something, even if they technically thought it was problematic. And, you know, and the same thing that I said about IAs a minute ago, if you ask 5 of them, you get 6 different opinions. Same thing goes for the FAA inspectors. And most of them don't know, you know, they're shooting from the hip too on gray area stuff.
We're not gonna discuss what sort of lighting I run on my Comanche when no one's looking.
I'll tell you, it's John Fuller. Those LEDs suddenly meant that I haven't had to take my tip tanks off to change those lights now for 5 years. That's a huge savings.
Yeah, that anybody that has tip tanks is well advised for LEDs, and if the Q4509s that are in Maggie ever burn out, I'll put LEDs in there, but they keep refusing to burn out, and I've had those in there for about 8 or 9 years.
Kristin, Rich Bergman with a Lycoming question.
Okay.
I have my engine in my Comanche is a factory reman. I got about coming up on 1,900 hours in it. And how's Lycoming going, since they don't build narrow deck engines anymore? Are they going to keep supplying parts for some indefinite period of time, or are they going to cut it all off and we've been forced to go to a wide deck? Comments?
Who knows?
Okay.
You know, I think the first hints you might get that they're thinking about doing that is they'll run a special and offer to take in your narrow deck and exchange it for a wide deck factory reman.
They're already doing something like that anyway. It's not a direct, but I think you have to add some money to it, but they do actually offer that.
Actually, I can comment on this because when my engine had 5,900 hours on it, instead of overhauling it, I simply traded it in for a factory reman. There was no upcharge. My mechanic tipped me off. He said, listen, you've got an engine that's been overhauled twice, and it and all of its parts and accessories are 6,000 hours old. But, you know, if you just pony up the extra money for a factory reman this once, you're going to walk away with a wide deck engine with roller tappets and ceramic, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what I did.
Well,
Okay.
and the nice thing about the change to roller tappets is that chances are they don't have a used case floating around for roller tappets, so you end up, even though you're not buying a brand new engine, you're probably getting a brand new case.
You're getting a lot of new parts, I believe, but
Oh, well, yeah, you get even on an overhaul, the whole top end is new anyway, but, you know, and you know, either the overhaul or the factory reman, you can figure that most everything is going to be new except the crank and the case, but in this case, you also get the case new.
Yeah, well, my crank is in the good list, and this motor has been taking care of all of its life, oil checks and the whole 9 yards, and is still carrying 73 along the line. So I don't know. I'm just going to keep flying it until I guess maybe I make up my mind and win the lottery.
I wouldn't be in a huge hurry to overhaul that. But you know, there's an awful lot of narrow decks out there.
You bet.
So if you had a real rare narrow deck, you know, I think you might end up finding yourself forced to go with a reman. But you know, an OR IO 540 parallel valve engine, you know, they made a bazillion of those in narrow deck, and there's still a lot of them out there. So they're probably more likely to hang on to those. I mean, if you happen to have a, you know, some rare Lycoming engine from the early 60s, you know, you like I don't know if they ever made the 720 in narrow deck, but if you had like a 720 in narrow deck or something like that, and you know, I could see those going away first, just because they decide that there's not a lot of call for the parts, so they're going to cut those off first.
Right. Well, this engine is a factory reman, so it's it was a 0-hour engine, obviously, and it's in really good shape. So we'll just keep on going and maybe just do a outside overhaul on it when I'm ready. Thanks.
I can't comment about the narrow decks. I had to I have a 0360 A1A, and the case cracked. Had a crack in it, could not be certified. So you cannot buy a narrow deck case. Lycoming doesn't offer it. My only option was to find a used case, which I've looked all over the world, found one in Canada. So it's a real problem if you need a case. Thanks.
Any more questions for Kirsten? Well, Kirsten, I want to thank you very much for this presentation. I look forward to seeing a PDF of your stuff that I will put up on the website. And while I'm talking about it, I thought I would give you a quick little tour of what's a possibility, so I can share this thing here. We have the Northeast Comanche tribe. We have a website that has all kinds of stuff on it. And one of the things we have on it is this list of the Comanche Zoom schedule, separate from our fly-in schedule. As you can see, the one we just did was following up your log with Kristin right here. And within the next couple of days, we'll have the recording of this whole thing out on the website that we have for storing those. and this will become a link to it. To get here, you go to here, northeastcomanche.org. Real simple. That gets you to the front page of our website. Then you click on Comanche Zoom, brings you to this page, which I just showed you, which has this whole long list of upcoming attractions. And this is like a third of what we have in the works. The next one we got planned is on June 4th, talking about aircraft insurance, translating the jargon is Dwight Coolman's going to be doing that. And Bob Lenart is a FAA wings guy at Bradley Fisdo. He's going to talk about getting new life for old pilots. He used to, old autopilots, I'm not pilots, autopilots. He used to work at VIP at Hartford, and he did a lot of autopilot repairs for them. And then on June 18th, STEC 3100 SE status and capability. Doug Telef was in on the discussion we did on autopilots. He's going to come in and talk about that one specifically. Garmin's coming in on June 25th to talk about the GFC 500. That's Wayne McGee. And then Mark Sullivan is going to come in and talk about the Trio autopilot STC stuff that they've been working on. So that's 3 autopilot things right in a row, specific to those particular ones. And of course, wide open for questions. Beyond that, we don't have anything really scheduled. And this is not necessarily the order that they're going to appear, but they'll give you an idea of some of the things that's going on. I update this every so often so that you can get the latest thing, you know what's going to be going on. Now, what I wanted to show you up here, like for instance, the autopilots, that's a link now. If I click the link, it brings you to a page, a PDF page that describes what the thing was about. And then down at the bottom, you can look at the video by clicking on this one, or you can listen to the audio by clicking on this one. And it comes up in an MP4 format, or M4A if it's on audio. It also gives you the list of the people that are the groups that are involved in putting these things together. As we call it, a loose coalition of committed Comanche owners and pilots. And there's no particular order in terms of seniority. It's just plain alphabetic. So that's what's going on with that. If you have any questions at all about any of this stuff, if you go, I'll go back to here. There's all kinds of stuff here on the website. There's the officers, for instance. Or we can go back and look at the fly-in schedule. This is the one that the guy from Canada was asking about. Here on June 20th or 21st if it's lousy weather on the 20th, and November '89 at Resnick Airport, Ellenville, New York. There's food at the place, but there's an Italian restaurant right outside the gate. Wings and Wheels for Warriors. Boyd Coombs is putting that thing on to put it together, and it is a lot of fun. Last year there's competition for the best truck, the best car, the best old car, the best new car, whatever, and the best airplane. 3 prizes, first, second, and third place. Last year, 2 Comanches walked away with first and second place, a 400 and a 260. And the third Comanche that was in the running was edged out by the guy that flew me over there in his Beechcraft. But that's all right. We allowed that. So there's all kinds of stuff on the website to look at besides just the Comanche, wherever it is. This stuff. Anyhow, check it out. Comanche, northeastcomanche.org. All righty. I will stop sharing and you can all get back. I will turn off the mute all. Or actually, I won't. Let's just leave. You can get on and chat as much as you want.
Hey, I want to thank everybody. I got to get running, but awesome evening. Very, very helpful. Thank you.
You can give a reaction on the bottom of your screen under reactions. You can give a thumbs up if you like what you heard.
A lot of nice thumbs there. Very good. Now, there was someone that said something about having a couple of tip tanks, was it? That were a special deal. You want to repeat that one?
Hi, this is Mike Dewey. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm the one that talked to you earlier. And by the way, I'm an A&P, and I really enjoyed Kristin's remarks on logbook. She did an excellent job. What I have is I have nacelle tanks that I purchased in 2003, and I got them from Capco. The fellow that the president of Capco built about 7 of these, and I have the tanks. They've never been installed on the airplane. They've never been removed from the box, and they're 20 gallons on each side. And I paid $6,075 for those tanks, and I'd be willing to sell them for the same price if somebody was interested.
Mike, maybe you can put
Can you hear
your
me?
contact information in the chat window.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's what I have, and I just wondered if perhaps I could leave my contact number with you folks, or maybe you could tell me how I might go about selling these to one of the members.
Yeah, Mike, why don't you go into the chat window if you can do that, and leave your name and phone number or email there. And also, like Kristin suggested, get a hold of Delphi and Facebook group and post it there.
Yeah,
That's what I heard.
okay,
That was Pat
those are good.
Pat Kiefer suggested it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, okay, you're right. Okay, and okay, I think we've got that figured out now, and we'll go ahead and do it that way.
Beautiful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you guys are free to chat. It's a free-for-all from here on.
Now, this is Robert. I just like to talk to somebody that uses the KLN 89B GPS. So I'll put that in the chat log.
We have been talking about expanding our Zoom approach here, going to a Sunday evening short session on small topics. And we're going to try it this Sunday, same time, same Zoom address, 7:30 Sunday night. And I'll be, trying the first one out. I'm going to do a quick little thing about flying the Hudson Corridor, including pictures. For those of you that have not done it, you've missed the world's best shot, best thing to do. It's even better than the Staten Island Ferry for 5 cents. But there's that going on. And I'm also going to spend a little time on the facility that we worked out for finding names within the database we're building for the Northeast Tribe. The way that you can find 10 people close to you, or 10 people close to wherever you're going, or even more along the route that you're going to fly. 10 people within, say, 10 miles of that route you're going to fly. Just a way to get connected. That's all as part of the Comanche GAP program. So those are the two things I'm going to be talking about this Sunday at 7:30. If you want to join me, it'll be a free for all. Every chance that it's a social event, not a real training session or anything like that. Give you an idea of what we're trying to do in the behind the scenes and give everybody a chance to talk to everybody. So I will send out an invite for this Sunday at 7:30. And if you want to show up, go. And if you don't worry about it.
Hello, Pete. Steve Shepard here in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Hi.
I guess the that map that you showed, that's a work in process. I guess it's not completed yet. Is that correct?
That map I showed actually is 2 years old, based on the database we had at the time. Our database is about 100 names more now, and spreads out farther than just the Northeast ICS tribe area. As you saw, there was a few that were like in Ohio and California even, that are part of the Northeast tribe by choice. But we've the list that I send this thing out to for invitation is, what is it, 367 names or something like that? Quite a few, and many more than are actually ICS people. So it's expanding quite a bit. The whole thing, I guess we're going to have to do the maps over again. That's what I was going to show on Sunday, was how we develop those things, and to give you an idea of how diverse the Comanche world is here. There's a lot of Comanches around that you probably don't even know about. I think about half of the Comanches are in the FAA database are part of a group like this, and the other half are not. So there's a whole bunch of Comanches out there that are just waiting to be contacted.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to believe that a lot of them aren't in touch with other Comanche owners. It seems kind of crazy to me. But back to that map. Is that something that's available upon request, or is it posted on your site, or how does that work?
It'll be. I ended up shutting it off. I'm going to try and get it back for you. All right. I can't get it to right now. I'm sorry. I will definitely show it to you on Sunday. It is, I can't remember. I don't think it's available on the website because it's kind of relatively proprietary at this point. But we took that map and zeroed in on northern New England, on New York area, on western Pennsylvania, New York, on the Washington, D.C. area, the area south of Washington, D.C. We zoomed in on those areas to show where people are. We're also working on, right now the way we find anybody close to you is based on your home address. We're also changing it so we can do it based on an airport's address. So like 10 people, the 10 people closest to this particular airport, as opposed to this person's house.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah, the idea of that was if you're going somewhere, then you know who you can get a contact with if you want to, share a cup of coffee.
Absolutely, that's awesome.
Well, come in on Sunday and I'll show you all about it.
Okay, I hope I can make that. Awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you for hosting these Zoom meetings. These are outstanding. I'm really enjoying them.
We got about 10 minutes more before it's officially end of the time, but come on down.
Well, thanks, Pete. This is Robert. I'm going to be signing out for the night. Hope to see y'all, if not Sunday, maybe on Thursday. Have a good evening.
Let's take it easy, Robert.
I'd like to make that all of the talk tonight is really feeding into the GAP program, where people and anybody who is interested in this, if they'll contact us, contact me, we will call you and determine what kind of information we can give you, plus some suggestions as to how to really develop that area without being totally immersed in it yourself. That will be the food on the next session that we have on the GAP program. But this whole thing this evening just really supports the idea that the GAP program has a real place and is probably, and we just need more participation in it. And that's what we're looking for. And if Steve Merrill would like to get involved to just get it started, please send me a note and we will get back to you. Especially if you give me the base, the airport, the designator for the airport that you think we can build it around.
Bill, is that the email address that's coming up on your video feed?
Yeah, that's Bill's address. I put it there on purpose.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I'll drop you a note.
You can also contact me. My Piper 32 Papa is up there also.
Well, I have some pretty straightforward kind of guidelines for how we put this out, Pete. So let's make sure we're on the same page.
Right.
Great meeting, gang. I'm going to go ahead and check out, and we'll see you next week. This is Rich Bergman. Bye. Okay, thanks. Bye.
This is Ray Fay. I'm going to check out for the evening also. It was very good, very, very nice.
Thank you, Ray.
We'll see you all again. We'll try to see you Sunday night.
I have a note, Ray. I'm the guy on the top left-hand corner of the screen that we were talking about last week.
Hey, we were talking on the phone the other day, weren't we?
Yep. I'm still responsible for the first one.
Okay, you take care. Good night, Pete.
Good night.
Bill, Stefan, Bernie, and Henry. That's the first time I ever been at a meeting with that many guys and knew all their first names.
I go to a lot of meetings where all we know is the first name.
Yeah, right. You have a good weekend.
Good night, all.
Well, since the subject is logbooks, one thing I found out on my logbooks, the stickers, my mechanics was doing stickers. And after about 10 years or so, they'll start to fade out. So that's just another reason why to photocopy and digitize all the documents to stop that fading out. But
yeah,
that
those stickers are probably like the things from when you buy gas. It's a thermal print as opposed to ink print, and the thermal prints do not last.
Yep. So like the topics was, just be sure to photocopy them and all that. That was kind of my experience with it there.
Kristin's absolutely right that a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yep.
One thing I'm not sure she covered is, since it's cheap to make copies in various forms, make more than one and don't keep them all in your house.
Yeah.
Send them to your parents if you're still lucky enough to have them, or a sibling or a good friend or your attorney, just to stick someplace in the file and say, don't throw them out, because they never throw anything away.
I leave mine, I get mine pictures all together, like I told Kristin, on my computer. I put them into a PDF or I put them into a PowerPoint, one or the other, but I also copy them to a data stick. So it's on my computer, I can get at it whenever I want, but it's on the data stick if I have to back it up or take it somewhere.
Yeah. And
I found that was very useful when someone was looking about, purchasing an airplane. The first thing they requested was the logs. I send them the PDF.
How many pages in that PDF?
Probably about 37.
Oh, well, when I copied my logs for the first time, I don't know, I had 300 or 400 pages.
Yeah.
How many pages per logbook page, or how many PDF pages per logbook? How many do you get in one PDF page?
Well, when I was doing the PowerPoints, I was putting one page on each sheet, each slide. So that was, it was hundreds. Because, page 1 and page 1A and 1B was the first opening of the book. And then page 2A and 2B. And that's the way I labeled the pictures. And they went into the thing. But I have 3 PowerPoints for the old Comanche, plus the 337s and stuff like that I copied. I have not yet done it for my new one.
One thing Kristin didn't mention was that you can get all your 337 from the FAA for $5 or $10.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's assuming that they went in.
awful lot of rooting around.
Yeah, you can get a complete history on your aircraft from the FAA.
Yeah.
Well, it's a few minutes early, but what do you think about this shutting this thing down?
Well, you're the boss.
Oh no, I'm just the moderator.
No objections on my part.
Okay, the same time next week, Thursday night, it'll be Dwight Coombs on insurance. You'll get the invite just like I always do, probably Sunday, and then again a reminder on Wednesday. And I'm going to do something Sunday evening. I'll send out a thing about that too. Okay.
Okay.
Good night, people.
Pete,
Thank you very much, Pete.
recorded this
Good
session.
night.
I don't know who has the most of it.
I have everything.